You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to an episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, huge shout out to our sponsors. The Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is the Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma. And it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. Adding to that is the Doghouse, and so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too, but I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC, and hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to an episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike and here, host, back with another episode. We're down at the wonderful Bedford's Camera today, and I'm not going to tell you what time it is because we're going to crack some drinks here in a little bit. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce my guest today, Meredith Mills-Merritt from Southside, the original Southside cocktail. So we're going to talk a little bit about the drink. Being a golfer, I love a good cocktail on the golf course. So we'll definitely have to try that on the golf course, and we will crack these in a second. But thanks for coming down. Really excited about your story. Really excited to learn more about it. You and your mom are, sounds like a really good team here, traveling around doing the thing and trying to get this drink on shelves. And it is, it seems like a bit of a generational drink too. It seems like, a lot of people think about, the club special and the old fashions and, whatever the transfusions now that are coming out for the golf course. But so this one is I'm excited to dive into and try. My nan was a huge gin fan, loved gin. My aunt went to Scotland and was part of a thing called Gin of the Month Club, and would have a few flights every month. And so my nan, it was never a bad time to crack a gin. And so I'm excited to dive in because it's going to bring back a lot of memories for me as well. But excited to dive into your story. Obviously, we're down at Bedford's today. It is Christmas time, which is always a great season to crack some drinks as well.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into the drink thing, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about kind of your upbringing, and then we'll dive into how this happens.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So excited to be here, especially in my hometown. So kind of going into that, I am a sixth generation Oklahoman, or so I am told. And I grew up here in Oklahoma City. I was a lifer K through 12 at Cassidy, and then I left when I was 18 to go to SMU in Dallas for undergrad and grad school. I was the defector in my family. I've got a proud family of Sooners, and so I crossed the dreaded order to go get my education, and it's just always a pleasure anytime I get to come back and visit the family and visit the old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So Cassidy Cyclone growing up.
go Cyclones.
Yeah.
That's
Was there field hockey when you were at Cassidy back then?
there was, but I was not on the field hockey team. I was
It's one of the very few schools that has field hockey.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was honestly not as hand-eye coordinated as those girls, so I picked cheerleading instead. So no, I was not on the hockey team, but yeah.
Growing up, do you come from a big family? Are you running around, pushing away all your siblings and trying to fight for some attention from your parents, or you're an only child?
Actually, no. I have two brothers, two younger brothers. So I'm the oldest of three. I have a middle brother named Sutton, who also Cassidy lifer. Younger brother named Parker, who was Cassidy K through 10, I believe. And then he spent his last few years in Connecticut at boarding school because he's smarter than all of us, which is annoying. And so I would say, I think, my family does a really good time and job of splitting attention and visiting all of us, which is great. So I'm never wanting for more. But I would say of all three three of us, I'm probably the most dramatic, as I'm sure you can, probably assume. But there's always so much fun that we have when we're together. I feel very fortunate that we have such a strong family dynamic. And I think that also just speaks to, how you grow up. When you grow up in Oklahoma City and like the values and the people that you're around and just the schedules that you have versus other places. So we're a pretty small family outside of that though. So it's really just our core group.
So a love of travel clearly early on.
Yes, very much so. I loved Dallas when I was younger because it had an Neiman Marcus. I know that that's like the craziest thing I could say. And so I love to shop. It's my, my hobby, whatever. I'll pick another hobby someday, but it's not. And so we started taking these, I would say, annual trips to Dallas. And then I was shown Southern Methodist University, and I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest place on earth. And I was like, and I'm 10 minutes away from said Neiman Marcus.
Yeah.
So as crazy as it sounds, that was a big driver for me. But yeah, so otherwise, visiting the siblings in Norman when they were there, my family about 10 years ago started to split their time between Oklahoma and Florida, which is great because when it gets chilly here, it's not so chilly there. And that really opened my eyes to some of the coastal states. And so I had always kind of gone back and forth between Los Angeles and Oklahoma City. So when I graduated from graduate school, I had gotten my MBA. I thought I was going to do investment banking or management consulting, and that was not my path. I quickly learned that brand management was more of what I was interested in. And a lot of those opportunities were in Los Angeles. And so I moved out there 7 years ago and have been there ever since. And now my husband is there. He's at UCLA, which I hate because I went to USC for a little while for a supplemental master's. So we are truly a house divided. But no, it's the funny thing about Los Angeles is there's so many Oklahoma ties too, and so many Oklahomans. I am always shocked when I meet people. And then you have Will Rogers Park. You also have, based in Norman, where all the fraternity and sorority houses are, you have a Chautauqua near where the Palisades were off of the Pacific Coast Highway. And so there's just little hints of home there, which I appreciate too. So it doesn't feel like hyper foreign, but yes, I am a warm weather bug now.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So when we know, obviously you go to SMU,
Yep.
But before you go to SMU, other than a great store down there, the campus is beautiful and it is a great school.
Yeah.
What was kind of like high school childhood dreams? You've grown up around, being the eldest child, but you have great family to look up to. Mom and dad are doing their thing, very focused and driven on their careers. So you grew up with two great role models. What do you dream of doing when you're cheerleading at Cassidy? Like, what do you think your life's going to be?
I love that question because for the longest time, like truly up until my senior year of college, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Both of my parents are attorneys. I was the first. And my dad is famous in our family for quoting, "You can do anything you want the day you get out of law school." And so
no pressure.
No pressure at all. And so in my head, I honestly wasn't worried about it. I was like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Step one, get into the college that I want to go to. I only applied to 3 schools. I applied to OU, TCU, and SMU. TCU, sorry, TCU fans. TCU was the fallback in case I didn't get into SMU. Thank God. Go Mustangs. And then OU was like, okay, my family went there. Like I would, I'm going to apply just, we'll see what happens. And so I literally remember the day I got into SMU because we had a mailman in our neighborhood that both of my parents had put on high alert. This is how friendly everyone is here. Like, I don't really feel like anywhere else people would care, especially your mailman or mailwoman. He comes around the corner with the red envelope sticking out the side. My parents are in the driveway. We're all sobbing. Like they drive to school with the envelope and pull me out of class. And they're like, oh my God, look. So at that point, I wasn't really thinking about my career. I was more so just like, this is awesome. This is the first step in a step of many. And then I was like, and then I'm going to go to SMU for law school or UT or like, I was always very highly motivated. I've always been very type A, honestly, fairly OCD. So, success was not optional for me. It was kind of just like, okay, what's the pathway to get there and what does it look like? And so I got my ass kicked by the LSAT 3 times. And it was the first time that I had ever had such rejection. I had gotten gone to SMU. I had gotten into the business school. I had done so many things and felt so on top of my game. And then this was my first kind of true perceived failure. And it really rocked my world.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I'm not getting into the law schools that I really want to go to. You know, what are the other options that are out there? And because I had done well enough in the business school, that opened up the avenue to get my master's of business administration a little bit earlier than others would have with no work experience, because they were like, okay, your GPA is fine. And so it was at that moment that I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to go to law school, which breaking that news was hard, I'm not going to lie. We do have one future lawyer in the family. Shout out to, again, the youngest, smarter brother, Parker. My middle brother's going to also hate that I said that, but whatever.
1 out of 3 is still better than 0.
Yeah, 1 out of 3 is better than 0 out of 3 lawyers.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, like, don't get me wrong. My middle brother is like a finance wizard. And so he got like the math brain. I got the sparkly creative brain, and Parker got the legal brain. And so I think between the 3 of us, we're a pretty good triple threat. But anyways, so I go to business school, and I was really passionate about women in finance and women in business because it was such an underrepresented space. And I was like, there are still other avenues for me to do. And so I started a very quant heavy background. I was in classes with mostly people who were pursuing their MSF. And so as I worked through those finance classes, I started to realize I can do this. Math doesn't scare me. Numbers don't scare me. But what I can do in 2 hours, my peers and my future, job competitors can do in 20, 30 minutes. So it was not something that I was like, this is not smart for me to spend my time doing. So then I was like, okay, SMU did a really great job of pushing people towards real estate, management consulting, investment banking, like very wonderful strategic careers. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to go into management consulting. And it wasn't until I took a class, and this professor actually sits on my advisory board, where I learned about brand management and product innovation. She had had an incredibly robust career with Nestle and all these really wonderful companies. I mean, she was in Italy with Nescafe, and she was telling me all of this, and that you're basically this, mini brand manager, mini CEO of a brand. You run the P&L, but you also help with the brand and the strategy and the operations. And I was like, that sounds like a good balance for me. And so it was from that point forward where I got the best advice I'd ever received, which was you can pick 2 of the 3: location, job title, and like salary was the 3rd one. And I was like, okay, well, I'm fine. I'm fine with being underpaid. I want the associate brand manager job title, and I want to be in California. That's where most of those heavy CPG based careers were. It was there, Chicago, New York, and I was like, I would freeze my entire body would freeze over in Chicago. So that's where we went. So that's how I actually ended up out there.
Okay.
And I started doing the brand management and product innovation for the Unilever Prestige portfolio. I fell onto a fairly specific team that dealt with teenage acne. So ingredients that are fairly regulated, salicylic acid, like things like that always have to go through the FDA in terms of compliance. So that's where I really cut my teeth in terms of kind of learning about it. It was a little bit larger of an organization, but still not too rigid, because these were their acquisition brands versus their in-house brands. So they were all treated a little differently. Rose through the ranks pretty quickly because the theme of my career was my boss was either fired or quit every time I joined a new job. So I kind of speed ran the brand management program, got to be a senior marketing manager for a skincare startup, turned around and was like, what am I doing? COVID hits. Yeah. I'm doing a great job, I think, selling products, creating campaigns for other people. What does this look like? And so that combined with, I had been given the opportunity to go back to the University of Southern California for a consumer behavior program. That's where I was really passionate. Like, I was a super nerd about why do people buy what they buy? Because if we're going to do this, I'm going to go deep. Again,
and it's fascinating, right?
So interesting.
There's so many brands out there that we don't even think about, that we go and buy them. But, you say, when's the last time you saw that brand or an advertisement? And you're like, I don't know. It's just in my world.
And it's in your brain.
Yeah.
And you've already decided the second that you look on a shelf of what you're going to do. You just don't know it yet, but your brain does. Yeah. And so that's part of the reason, and we can talk about it too, that the packaging looks the way that it does, trying to kind of play to that. I only have a limited amount of time to get someone's attention. And so there was a project. This professor also sits on my advisory board. I've just been collecting fabulous people along the way.
That's smart. Yeah.
They're
very
wonderful.
Smart. Yeah.
The project was, okay, create an RTD, ready to drink cocktail. And the stipulation for the class was it has to be wine-based because wine was a category that still is suffering pretty heavily, and younger drinkers weren't really leaning that way. And so through that, though, I got all of this wonderful information and data from the library and the sources that were available to me on white spirits, more specifically gin. Tequila and vodka, obviously, were already way ahead of their time, but gin was kind of looking like it was primed and ready for this renaissance, and this is in 2021. So I spoke to the family, and I was like, what do we think about trying to commercialize this family recipe? And then 12 months later, R&D, we have these aluminum cans with a pretty good drink, if I say so myself. And that's like truly from the origin story of a massive, like, I was so not concerned with what I was going to do in high school at all. I was cheerleading my ass off. I was just happy to be there.
Right.
And then I get to college, same thing. I'm like, I'm just going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go to law school. Boom. I could have never predicted that I would have ended up here slinging gin, but here we are.
Yeah, if you go back to high school you and you turn and you tell your parents, hey, I'm going to be slinging alcohol when I'm older for my profession, they might have just had a heart attack on the spot, right? Like,
I think I would have, like, for about 0.02 seconds loved to just see the immediate, like, facial reactions. But after that, I don't want to know. But it's, there's actually been no better support system for me than my parents. And we've actually, my parents are my roadies. Like, for those of you who are listening, my mom is actually here today. And I force my mom and dad to travel with me whenever I can because my husband is in night class. And so I don't like to go to some of these places by myself. And it's been the most incredible experience to be later in my adult life and spend this much quality time with them. But again, it just goes back to the family and the community that they fostered for us here in Oklahoma City. And we had, wonderful summers, which is where this cocktail came from at Grand Lake. The routine was spectacular, and I truly flourished because of my parents' support. Without them, I have no clue what that would look like. Maybe I would be in law school somewhere. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Who knows? But it's just been a really beautiful, messy process.
So you went from idea to can in, you said, a very short amount of time.
Very short amount of time. Well, so this recipe had been in the family for forever. So similarly to your Nan, we grew up in a gin family. My dad was making gin and tonics for his grandmother at 13. So, like, we are not afraid of gin. And then every summer, because we all know how hot it can get here at the lake, my mom would throw together whatever gin she had on hand. Those frozen, like, Minute Maid lemonades that are just filled with bad things, but so delicious. One of those, some fresh mint, and call it a day. And it was always the most refreshing cool off. I'm not going to tell you that I drank underage, but I will let you read between the lines. And so
a lot of product testing.
A lot of R&D. R&D has been my passion for a long time. So we had this in the back of my head, and I was like, I have a great gin recipe. If gin is really truly slowly going to take off and I can educate people, I think we can do this. Beauty, and I talk about this a lot with anyone who will listen because I'm annoying. Beauty has a very specific
You're passionate. This is reword annoying to passionate. Save you there.
Exactly. So the innovation blueprint was just educate, because you use all these fancy ingredients in your skincare and there's all these actives. And the reality is it's the same goo in every jar, especially if you work with a contract manufacturer. It's just marketing. And so I had worked for individual companies that had their own innovation labs, and I had worked for companies that used contract manufacturers. And so the name of the game was, we're going to tell you the ingredients. We're going to educate you on everything, and then you can make the decision. And so I was like, this is such an opportunity for us to do the same thing in alcohol, because so many people are afraid of gin. They don't understand the difference between a compound gin or a distilled gin. And even further than that, I can't play in the same sandbox as the vodka and tequila brands because they would A, crush me, and B, I'm just not interested in that. It's truly like back to the foundational marketing days of like, okay, if you're going into a saturated category, you find your niche.
Yeah.
And so gin was the identified niche, and we had been introduced, which is part of the kind of faster process. We'd been introduced to a fabulous team. They call themselves Flavor Architects, that I was able to work with through a family friend. And honestly, the rest is history. It's so crazy to think about, but it was a secret. Nobody but my family knew that this was, and my husband knew that this was going on. So I had the luxury of kind of innovating in secret and taking my time and not really feeling bound to traditional innovation guidelines. I kept my day job as long as I possibly could. So the 12 months was perfect because I felt like it was exactly what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. And you put everything that you've learned up to this moment into your own product because one, you clearly see a need, but then two, like it's different when it's your own product, right?
100%.
Like versus you're working for someone else, you're doing all the things that you've already done to this moment, you know, to give you the education that you have, building skincare brands or what, you know, it doesn't matter what the brand is or what the product is, it's the same formula, right? You're finding out, you know, how do we get people to buy this stuff? But you know, you come home and, you know, what if we have this family recipe? Like, I have this knowledge. Why not? Right?
Why not?
Because in 20 years or 30 years or however long, you're going to regret not trying it.
Exactly.
Right?
And it was a calculated bet based on where we saw the market moving with ready to drinks, what we were hypothesizing would happen with gin based on the information that was provided, as well as, to your point, and I acknowledge it fully, I was probably a pretty bad employee there towards the end. I became a little bit of a know-it-all, but I had all of these ideas and I was so full of this like fire feeling of like, I just want to try and see if this actually works. And so I feel a lot less crazy now than I did back then. But it's a nice combination of things because I'd like to just say, yeah, I knew this was going to be an overnight success, but it was far from that.
Yeah. Okay, let's pop some of these.
Let's do it.
It's early. It's like popping a Christmas present here.
Oh my gosh, I know. Have you gotten to try it? Or
I know this is live. I wanted to try.
Oh my god!
So
okay, that's exciting.
I'll put those there. Thank you to Bedfords for giving us some ice.
That was so nice of them.
Do that. So a funny story that just came to my mind here. You mentioned the summer running around when it's really hot. So my nan on my mum's side loved gin till the day she died, and I have this great photo of her. Like I always go home for Christmas, every other Christmas usually. I have this great photo of her, you know, sipping. Kind of like it's like a shot glass with a stem. It's like a fancy shot glass. I don't know why she had one, but it looked like it looks like a wine glass in shot glass shape, like size, right? It's like a mini wine glass. And so I have her, you know, sipping this gin straight out of the bottle, basically just poured it in, shot of gin at like 2 p.m. during Christmas. And we crack up at that photo all the time because it's just, it didn't matter what time of day. She's like, if there's a great gin, I'm going to try it.
Awesome.
And this one was, you know, flavored and had all the things in it. But the other thing that came to my mind is on my dad's side, my granddad loved gin and tonics. And I only remembered it when you said gin and tonics and it was hot because they had kind of a big yard. And so I used to go kick a football around and run around with my younger brother. And I remember running into the kitchen one day. I'm like, I need a water, you know, I'm like, yeah, I'm running around, but need something to drink. And he's like, here, try this. Me looking at it, thinking it was clear, thinking it was a glass of water. It was gin and tonic. And I was like 10. Right. And so I'm like, oh, what is this? I'm like running to this thing and I'm spitting it out because I'm 10 and he's just there like chuckling to himself.
Oh my God.
So thank you for bringing that flashback back because he's been gone like since I was 8 and I'm 35 now. So it's been a while. So yeah, it's this, cheers.
Okay. Cheers. No pressure.
Definitely taste lemon and the mint. That's dangerously good, that is. I'm not going to tell you what time of day it is.
Sneaky. That's what I tell people is the 10% ABV is both what'll get you, but what people appreciate. And so to your comment earlier on the golf course, wait for the back 9.
Yeah.
Because your game will fall off about hole 14. I have seen this with my own husband.
Yeah.
So I've actually, he's my guinea pig in terms of, okay, when is it okay to kind of crack some of these open? But the answer is always, but to protect your scores. That's the advice that I give.
Or
But
help. We never know.
that's
Right?
so
Some
true.
swing juice, a
Exactly.
little bit of like cool the nerves a little bit. There's a lot of guys that I play golf with that they won't say that they need something, but usually they need something to cool the nerves.
From my understanding, it's physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's
It's a
spiritual.
lot of things.
So
Yeah.
if I can provide even just a couple points on someone's score,
Mhm.
great. Maybe that's my next study.
Yeah.
I'll just run with golfers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge growing market. Well, why not? Okay, let's dive into the recipe a little bit. You mentioned
Let's do
it
it.
is a family recipe, so there's clearly a very personal connection to this.
100%.
Grand Lake is where you guys would go to the lake a lot, like a lot of people in Oklahoma.
Yep.
It's beautiful out there, especially if you're playing golf.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about. I mean, actually, let's start with earliest memory of like where does this come from for you? What do you remember from drinking this amazing Southside drink at the lake?
You know, it's funny because you can feel the hot. You can feel just the visceral summertime, and you come off the lake, you've had an awesome time, you're tubing, you're on the sea-doo, you're on the boat, whatever. And my parents, more so my mom, is like the queen of hosting. She is. Nobody throws a better party or is a better cook or like better person on the planet than her. And so this was her summertime cocktail, and it was just her go-to recipe. And so I knew that it was going to be there. Like that was a surefire thing. And so I adopted that into my life in college and later on when we would have parties or be invited to things. Like this is what I referenced. And I would call her all the time and be like, is it really just those ingredients? Then we decided to iterate because the Minute Maid things started to give us headaches, and you kind of start to get a little bit less resilient to alcohol as you get older.
Absolutely.
And so how could we clean up this recipe? And that was what we started to serve from there on out. And so my mom we just called it Leah's Summertime Cooler. And I was like, from a marketing standpoint, nobody's going to give a hoot about that.
Yeah.
And so what we realized is we actually reversed our way into a Southside because the lore goes, it started, nobody can agree on this, by the way. There's like 3 different stories, but the one that we chose was, okay, South Side of Chicago, gangland split between the North and the South with Al Capone era. The South Side had the bathtub gin that was not palatable. So bartenders in the area would put herbs, citrus, sugar, whatever they could to mask the taste of the literal bathtub gin. And so you have the South Side cocktail that was born. And so it's the exact same ingredients. It's gin, it's lemon, it's mint. Some people make theirs with lime. That's when it gets confusing. I'm like, no. The original, again, air quote, that's how it's made. And so my best friend in the entire world, she was my maid of honor. We actually met the summer before school started at orientation. She and I, we spend every July together with her family in the Hamptons area. And out there is where I was introduced to a drink called a Southside, but that one was made with vodka. And so it was also made with a mixer that at the time was called like Lemon X, which is similarly corn syrup, food dye, whatever. Like your hangover the next day was not great. And so we started iterating on those to have it feel a little bit better the next day. And voila, the original Southside was born. And so it's been this lovely family recipe that's been with us for as long as I've been alive, at least. I mean, and who knows when my mom first found out about it. Like I said, they both grew up in gin families.
Yeah.
We're a gin family. And so the most important part to me was, and I feel like a lot of people experienced this during COVID, was I like to drink. Drinking is awesome. I'm going to have one.
Yeah.
So I went, cold sober. I went California sober. And then and now I'm back on the booze.
Yeah.
And I was like, the common thread here is I just don't want to throw off my routine. So that's where you see a lot of the formulation notes coming from, is just a selfish request of, I still want to have a drink. I want it to be fairly stout and I want it to be convenient. And I don't want to feel like my next day is ruined. Like I just want to make sure that it's as good as you can get in a can.
Yeah. So from finding this data, getting the original, like the idea ready and obviously talking to the family and inception, take me to then the build, because that fascinates me. And we can dive into, your consumer the knowledge you have as far as like the logo and the color scheme.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in that too. But we got time here. Like
Perfect.
from idea from like, let's do this to what's the first step?
That is a great question. I'll walk you through my experience, and then I'll be curious to hear in your background and everything if you've heard otherwise. So for me, based off of observations that I had seen, not from companies that I even worked with, just in the competitive landscape of beauty and personal care and skincare, so many companies launch multiple SKUs at once. So I knew off the bat that we were only going to do one thing, and we were going to do one thing really well, and it was going to be gin. So our North Star was always redefine the ready to drink cocktail experience with a modern, timeless twist. Pretty straightforward, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, okay, we know exactly what we're doing. Anything else that we would ever introduce would also be gin, because we're going to take the time to make our own proprietary compound gin, which I'll talk about. So having the product be perfect was my first step. I didn't want to think about anything else until it got complete and total sign off from everybody that was in my life, and also confirmed, yeah, this tastes like the original. And so I needed it to do her recipe the honor, but also what I hate more than anything is lazy innovation. And it's everywhere. And you see, I mean, we all see it, we all know it. I won't name names, but I'm like, why on earth is there a canned alcoholic eggnog? I'm scared. So so that was number one. Number two, when you crack this thing open and it's ripping cold, the first word that comes to 99.9% of people's mind is refreshing. And so our tagline, that is not on the packaging because the TTB actually won't allow it, is fresh. And you
Yeah.
can bleep that out. But fresh is F asterisk CK, which we actually have a trademark on. You can now trademark the F word, which is really fun. So that was actually, it came to me almost immediately. And I was like, okay, so we have this fun drink. We have this punchy, get consumers out of their head, throw them off. The CEO of Liquid Death is notorious for talking about this. He's like, I don't want anyone to be apathetic about my brand. I want them to feel emotions. And people have a lot of opinions on Liquid Death. I love them.
Yeah.
I think they're great. And so I was like, that is what I have to do. And so through that process, we thought, okay, what are color? I spent so many hours in liquor stores, BevMos, from big and small, and looked at packaging, which was the next step. Because to me, in my brain, I was like, okay, I have the product. Like, I was thinking about it from like what a brand launch at Unilever looked like. And the first thing you told everybody was what's inside, what's the packaging look like, and when's it available. Then you went into the branding. So I spent hours looking at packaging. I probably texted everyone in my family 400 options at a time. And we landed on the trend at the time in 2022 was very muted pinks, lavenders, very like millennialized. I don't even know if that's a word, but
Soft tones. Yeah.
soft tones, boring fonts. And when you look at the retail space that's allocated, just like any store anywhere, you're like, I might have one slot and it might be on the bottom shelf. So if that's the case and someone's looking, how do I catch their eye as fast as possible? And so we came up with, it was myself and my graphic designer, who was such a blessing. I literally found him from a Facebook feed, like it was kismet. And so the yellow obviously is lemon, the green is mint. So it has that nice playful ingredient touch, but also I never wanted it to feel skewed masculine or feminine.
Yeah.
Because I think RTDs, people are like, oh, that might be girly. And then that's where you see some of those muted tones and things of that sort. You also have all those low calorie, low carb call outs. I was like, we're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
This is not low calorie. This is not low carb. This is not low sugar. It is a cocktail in a can. On top of that, I have always loved characters. Like, I think that they're so much fun to play with. Why would I not introduce one? And so our lemon character, affectionately named Squeeze, was a big part of the evolution there, and building a world where you kind of enter Squeeze's world. And so when you turn the packaging, kind of like you see Squeeze in jail, which is the story of Al Capone in the Southside. You see Squeeze lounging for relaxing. And so there's iterations on that. So once I had locked the product, the tagline, and the packaging, that informed building the brand world. And what I had noticed is a combination of two things. This is when TikTok was at its absolute height, with not only consumers self-educating, but there was this really funny undertone of nostalgia where younger generations would be like, oh my God, I feel like, 2012 was the last good year. And I'm like, as someone who was in high school in 2012, I don't necessarily know if that's the case, but when you think about, okay, how do you evoke this nostalgia, but how do you make it aspirational? Because people love and are almost like addicted to some of these worlds that feel not necessarily unachievable, because that was never the goal, but just really beautiful, really picturesque, really lifestyle forward. And I hadn't seen anybody do that yet in canned cocktails. Beauty all day, every day. Those campaign shoots are some of the most gorgeous things you've ever seen, as you know. But for this, it was different. And so the brief I gave one of my really good friends who's in LA, I basically forced her to come with me to every job that I had because we met at my original job. I said, picture the original Gossip Girl, not the reboot, like season 2, so they're less awkward. But what would a cocktail party in the backyard at one of their Hamptons houses look like? They'd be barefoot, they'd be fabulous, they'd be, kind of blurry. And so we built mood boards and mood boards and mood boards off of that, actually.
Yeah.
And the goal was, whenever you crack a Southside, wherever you are, I want you to be transported into that world. If you're golfing, if you're on the beach, if you're on the boat, whatever you're doing. So that's where that came from. So once we had that, we had the campaign imagery, then comes kind of like the nitty-gritty stuff that relates specifically to alcohol. You have the legal side, you have the operational side, you have the production side, all of it. From the production side, that was the longest lead because we work with contract manufacturers, as do most people. And what was really important to me was finding a contract manufacturer that could do this product justice. And the 3 things that were non-negotiable were the use of citric acid as the preservative to keep it all natural. Citric acid is an organic compound. It can get demonized in certain groups, but that's kind of like the super far health nuts.
You're drinking alcohol. It's gonna
Right,
be
like
okay.
it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Like we have to level out somewhere.
Yeah.
So it was the use of citric acid
Yeah.
versus potassium sorbate or sodium benzoate, and I'll get into that shortly. The second is a tunnel pasteurizer. That's an expensive machine. That's like a machine that you don't have. It can be up to $1 million. The last bit was the certified organic piece. And so as we were going through the formulation process, I ensured that anything that we used in R&D would get us to those points. So to find a contract manufacturer that could kind of tick off all 3 of those in the beginning at our super small MOQ was really difficult. So what we decided to do was we thought we found a place that could do it. They said yes. We went all the way through the process with them. We were supposed to launch in June and ended up having to delay the launch to the following January because we found out that they lied to us. Like, I had even gone so far as to approve the final sample. They came back and were like, hey, our master blender is not comfortable making it this way. We've added those 2 preservatives that I just mentioned. Yeah. And so not only would that have sacrificed the organic certification possibility, it also meant we couldn't say that it was all natural. And on top of that, from my beauty days, vitamin C can also be called ascorbic acid. And when ascorbic acid interacts with some of those preservatives, it has the opportunity to create an additional carcinogen known as benzene. Okay. The FDA has known about this since the 90s. There's no real laws against it. And so I was like, this is a product that I wouldn't even drink at this point. Like, yeah, you're having alcohol, but why are we doubling down on the bad? That made no sense to me. So instead of moving forward, we scrapped the entire thing, lost 6 months, and launched in dry January.
But is it very important to
Right.
do those and to keep to those beliefs, but also to have organic and all natural in.
Yeah.
Like that's huge.
And no artificial coloring.
Yeah.
Even with the natural flavors, we went into the flavor ingredient dynamics and we made sure that there weren't any non-organic sugars, just the creepy crawlies that can kind of find their way into things. Because I understood that with modern manufacturing capabilities, there are certain restrictions. I'd love to bartend this and put it in a can and send it out at 40 proof, but that's just not the reality.
Right.
So that combined with, I'm going to do the best that I can possibly do and just see what happens, because as a consumer, that's what I wanted. I use clean beauty products, but like, if I'm at a wedding, might smoke a cigarette. Like, there's an 80-20 to life. You can't be 100% perfect all the time. So how do you create something that fits into someone else's 80-20? And that's where this was born. So I appreciate the response has been so positive, because I think it was something that people didn't even know that they could ask for, based on the fact that alcohol is kind of the last frontier to see the benefits of consumer education. Beauty was first. They're like, oh my gosh, if I'm putting this on my skin, like what's inside, parabens, phthalates, all of those things. Now you're kind of seeing it, especially in light of the MAHA movement, whether you agree with it or not. It's bringing into the cultural conversation, reading ingredient labels, artificial dyes, especially when they're targeted towards kids. Alcohol, we see the trends. People are already starting to whisper, but we're ahead of that curve. And so it was one of those things, to your point, where I'm like, thank God we did that. Like, it would have been so bad otherwise.
Yeah. I love the Instagram too. And I love the logo and, you talk about the era, right? Of just, and the lifestyle that, like you said, when you feel like you have this drink, it takes you to that place, whether it is the Hamptons, but, or anywhere in the world, right? But you have that aesthetic in your mind. And the design squeeze, like everything takes you back, right? And like you said, it's not just soft tones and a girly can, because maybe whatever it is, like there's obviously a lot of competition out there that if I see one of my buddies drinking it, whatever can it is, I'm like giving them shit for it, right? Like I'm like, grab a beer or something, like, like do you see what you look like? Just but that's it's smart looking at, and obviously the color scheme, it's not only great, it also speaks to the lemon and the mint, which is everything ties in. And, these are all things that subconsciously we subconsciously we understand what's going on, but visually and like we don't voice that because it's just there. And I see it's green and yellow, but you just, your brain is putting them together, but you're not verbalizing that.
Exactly.
Which is the beauty of branding and everything that you do on the back end of why it's the color it is, right?
100%.
Why the social media looks the way it does, and it's the lifestyle around the brand and the drink versus, oh, this is just a drink, go have it whenever you want to have it. No, there was a key time and a reason and built around this whole brand, which I love that, because you've clearly thought about it a lot, like
I'm passionate.
Passionate. This is not just something you've thrown together, with the family recipe because you can. Like, this is something that has taken you a lot of sleepless nights to figure this out.
Yes.
And a lot of speed bumps, as you just mentioned.
I will say, I thought at the time that it couldn't get crazier than beauty. Turns out it can. And it's alcohol. There are so many unspoken rules and regulations and red tape, and I feel like every single day has been like an additional master's program. And so on the one hand, I'm super encouraged by it. But on the other, like, what I don't want to give the idea of to anyone listening is like, oh, this has just been a freaking cakewalk. It's truly if you get knocked down 99 times, you stand up 100 most of the time. And yes, the wins are awesome, but I find that, humility is a natural ally to success. And so we don't really talk about a lot of that. We more so focus on, we're never making the same mistake twice, because we can't afford it as a smaller company. And with the competition that's in place, it's a higher stress environment for a product.
And sometimes you're going up against these products that in their own product lineup are a loss leader, because there are other products where they make all their money and they're just putting this out because they need to have something in that category, but they have millions and millions of dollars to spend on advertising.
Exactly.
Or whatever it is, throwing people out of planes to go jump, as Red Bull does, jump from plane to plane. Not Muppets, but like like I said, you're competing with the entire industry.
100%.
And then also the trends, and then people's just general, they've drank this on the golf course because that's what they drink growing up, right? It's hard to break that mold as well.
Exactly.
And fit every generation.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the new generation of the data is coming in on
crazy.
gin.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
A long time.
So, timing's everything.
everything. So I feel lucky that in terms of timing, we were early enough that and I think to your point with those larger pieces of competition, the biggest unspoken hurdle is distribution
Yeah.
because the way that it's been broken up and it goes against everything that I learned in my past life, which is okay because there's so many things out there. But in terms of how do I be successful with the playbook that I have, there was just an entire set of chapters missing as it relates to the three-tiered system. And in certain states like Texas, you have an additional tier. And so for those big brands, to your point, not only do they really not care, they just kind of want it on the shelf because they're making their money elsewhere, but they actually have the shelf space and the distribution to do so. Like the uphill battle of a state by state approach is not to be understated. And so this product fit well into some of the portfolios of those distributors for that reason because they took a look. They were like, okay, we don't have anything that's female founded. We don't have anything that's certified organic. We don't have anything that's gin based that's not a gin and tonic. And so that was like our Willy Wonka golden ticket to get some of that initial distribution because we were different enough at the time. And so just riding that wave has been really important.
So you mentioned having like going down to producing your own gin. So
Right.
let's dive into that because that is not a small feat to do, but it's also it's a lot easier to just take somebody else's.
I would agree with you.
Like as a startup.
It's also
Right.
gin was slightly more expensive as well.
Mm.
Like a true junipery gin. And so there's two types of gin. The first is a distilled gin.
Mhm.
And I am not the expert here. I'm just giving you kind of my back of the napkin explanation, which is that is the one that's actually distilled with the juniper and the juniper berry. Compound gin is what they call grain neutral spirit, which is not vodka. It's not the same thing. Grain neutral spirit plus botanicals. So what makes gin, again, is that juniper profile and that herbaceous kind of bite that you get. I had always trended towards a lighter, more floral gin versus some of the harder core gins. And so that was really important to me here because a lot of people are still polarized by that spirit. Either they had a really bad night in college, which I don't blame them, I've been there, or they just had too many gin and tonics. And tonic water, let's be honest, is disgusting, in my opinion. So, I mean, it's like, let's get more creative with gin.
Right.
And there are so many beautiful gin cocktails out there, and this is one of them that like completely got lost. So, in that innovation process, what we realized is we have our own custom compound gin because we went so far as to make those custom organic compliant botanicals. And you'll get little hints of rose, you'll get little hints of cardamom. Like there's tiny, tiny, tiny little cues that we tweaked all of those to make it as specific as possible. And so with that, what we realized was, okay, great. This formulation is super ownable. And this gin is a gin that can introduce people to an entire new category of white spirits and exploration. And I like to own, that's what I wanted to own. That's the space that I really wanted to own. I wanted you to try Southside and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I liked gin.
Yeah.
Go out to a bar or a really cool cocktail lounge, try something that has gin in it, and just slowly start to reshape their perception, literally one person at a time. I'm not changing lives. I'm not saving lives. I'm just trying to get gin a better rap.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. Like there's back to my experience as a 10-year-old, right? Like, just like I was like, oh, what is this? It's just some rocket fuel gin that my granddad was drinking with tonic water. I was just like, oh, what is that?
Right.
And then, but I would say for me growing up, like gin and tonic was generally a drink for the older people in my family.
Absolutely.
Right. It was never, a young person's drink when we were in college. It was like drinking terrible vodka,
Yes.
The cheapest vodka you could find.
Yes.
Right. Very rarely would it be a whiskey. And I've got terrible stories about trying to drink whiskey for the first time, learned the hard way. But, or it's just, back home, generally you start drinking cider first because it's a little easier, a little more fruity, and then you go to the beers and stuff.
Yeah.
But, and that's I'm not going to dive into how old you should be by drinking, because back home it's 18, here it's 21, which I think is absurd, but there's laws for
I
that
agree
for
with
some
you.
reason. But there's traditionally, right, gin has not been a college age drink,
No.
but it sounds like the data is skewing lower from everything you've seen as well.
Don't get me wrong, tequila is driving the growth of the white spirits market, and vodka right after. Gin is still a little bit of a sleeper, but we had identified that as being okay. And to me, when I see that, I'm like, well, maybe that means that not as many people will go into my sandbox as early as I am. And that allows us the opportunity to gain a little bit more trust and understanding and
Yeah.
share as it relates to gin specifically. And I think that there's nothing more chic than a gin martini.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with being the gin lady, because gin can provide you with like almost like vodka plus.
Mhm.
Like it's a little bit more sophisticated on the palate, and I find is a little bit more playful. And so I encourage people to give it another shot. But to your point, there are so many gins out there. You have to be super educated on it, because if you get a bad one, it's bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and even like like I said, I'm 35 and I can't nowhere near drink as much as I used to, and also bounce back from it like I used to. And so now I'm more selective with what I do drink when I go out and have
Right.
it. If I go out and have one or two at dinner,
Right.
and it kind of gives me the same feeling, but it's the education side of things.
Mhm.
To your point, right?
Right.
Of understanding and just having that. "Well, I'm just gonna try it,
Yeah.
right? And it'll trying this, it will change a lot of things, a lot of misconceptions, right? Or
Yeah.
preconceived notions of your gin experience maybe before that. Or maybe you haven't even had a gin experience
Yeah.
and you need to really try something. What's the so we've been at this now almost we're in the fourth year, almost coming up on five of us, well, three on launch year of January. If I have my timing right.
Yeah.
Um what's like plan from now, and then like would end goal dream world be to be acquired and sell this to a huge distribution company like that, the ones that we've kind of alluded to?
Absolutely. So my answer for you there is twofold in terms of the future and what I would love. So if, overnight we started doing, 8 million cases like Surfside, I would love that. And that kind of takes an acquisition, the stress of a potential acquisition off, because you're so much more able to self-sustain and you move out of that. So don't get me wrong, I would love that. But I find that with beverage, a lot of the time it is an acquisition that comes. And with that, lower cost of goods, expanded distribution. And for me, as the founder, as lame as it sounds, I obviously A, want to pay my investors back. And then B, I want to see this product do well, because I think it can. And so whatever is going to be the best for those two considerations is what I will do.
Uh-huh.
I find that CEOs often founders are often not the best CEOs. But I am in the position of having to do both, because I don't think a CEO would want to take my salary. And it's such a delicate time that I need to be here.
Yeah.
And so our goal over the next 3 years is to scale.
Mhm.
And so if we publicly launched, to your point, in January of 2023, which that's crazy, it's going to be 3 years, that 2026 is around the corner. You saying that, I'm like, really? So that was our proof of concept. We've proved the concept, and now we're in scale mode and compete mode. And so we know what works, we know what doesn't work. From that point as well, because we launched with a single SKU, I am often asked the question of what's next in terms of innovation. So I tell people we're not even thinking about introducing any products to market until most likely 2027. But that doesn't mean that we're not working on them internally.
Sure.
So we have 3 things in R&D. I won't share more to keep the mystery
Yeah,
alive, because
don't
then you
do
have to
that.
have me back.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
So
If we come back with more alcohol, we're good.
100%. And so that is what I'm really excited about because
Great.
that's the part that kind of goes back into my background where like that's the fun part that I get to do,
Yeah.
not, buried in invoices and accounting and all the fun end of year stuff that we all get to do. But
Startup mode.
yes, exactly. So that is my answer for you.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot to be said about really diving in and honing in on one product and nailing that one product, right? Versus like, hey, here's 10. They're all average, right?
Yeah,
Instead of being like, no, here's one. It's perfect. Let's go and perfect the next one
exactly.
and the next one and build it that way. And then later on in life, you can, you've proved that you have the foundation. You're like, okay, well now here's just kind of drop little ones out there, little product launches. But the first one is the key
100%
because
because
the others don't happen without this one, right?
well, and if a consumer is introduced to a new product that they've spent money on and it's not what they expect, it's both trial fatigue, but both my husband and I have seen this happen. We knew of another alcohol supplier that we really wanted to support, and we bought a 4-pack. They had multiple flavors and multiple SKUs right off the bat, and the batch was completely skunked. And because we knew them, we were like, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt and buy these other ones. They were delicious. But because of that, if it was just me and this was my first time and I didn't know them, I would have been like, ew, I'm never recommending that. And so that's my biggest fear because we see that happen all the time. I saw it happen all the time with beauty. People made the assumption that people love my cleanser. I'm going to come out with a toner, a moisturizer, and a spot treatment. No, don't do that, please. So, yeah.
Well, and the key point, one of the key points you just mentioned too is that the recommendation side.
Yes.
Like you're it's not only that one person, it's their
network
that they're recommending to, right? Or that the party that they're going and they're bringing a couple of cases of this in,
It's crazy.
right? Versus anything else
Mm-hmm.
because it's new and hip and they want to make a statement.
Yeah.
Try this. Trust me here. Try this,
And there's a huge like psychological satisfaction to that we look at.
Yeah.
Like we want you to bring us to parties and have us discovered that way because we don't really compete in the digital world. All of our stuff is kind of in real life focused. And so I appreciate you liking the Instagram because it serves a point, but it's not really where we want people to spend their time. And so word of mouth wins all day, every day, especially with some of the influencer fatigue that we start to see. So if you bring me to a party and somebody else likes me, that is the light bulb moment for me versus, oh, I saw this digital ad and maybe it's at my local grocery store.
Yeah. In person's always better.
100%.
Let's talk about, you mentioned expansion. That's the growth plan, really doubling down on that. What does that look like across Oklahoma and then also across the nation too?
We're super lucky. We actually just upgraded our distributor in the state of Oklahoma. So we work with Provisions, which is really, they're fabulous partners. So really just working on account penetration here and across the board. So the first hurdle is always securing the distributor. The second is getting the sign on from independent stores like you see across the network here of Oklahoma or some of the states that are more chain heavy. I'll use Florida as an example. They have ABC, they have Total Wine, they have Publix. So it varies state by state, the approach. But what we've found is markets like Oklahoma, not just because it's our hometown market, but because of all the independent suppliers, they're much more excited to get behind a brand like this because they can versus, the next Cutwater, High Noon, or Truly.
Yeah.
And so what other markets? New York is like that. So there's Connecticut is in a similar position. So how do we pay attention to the states that we know to be supportive while also getting as much chain volume as we can because that's where the money's made.
Yeah, for sure.
And the biggest marker of success that people reference in this category is your velocity metrics. And so how many sales per store per week are you doing? And so Tennessee is a great example that I like to provide in addition to Oklahoma and Oklahoma City, specifically Grand Cru. Like how many 4-packs are we selling per door per week is what I'm really concerned about. And I have people who kind of help me look at this and then we iterate from there. A lot of things can be taken into consideration, time of year, price point, but across the board, double and triple down across the markets we've already opened and exclusively do things that we know work, which is in real life activations across the board, whether that's a local tasting on a Tuesday night or a super fancy dinner that we co-host with other brands. So that's where the majority of our time is spent, as well as partnerships. And so the two partnerships that we have right now are the LSU Tigers. That is not a statement on my affiliations with football. Again, I come from a Sooners family, and they're playing here pretty soon together in Norman. And the Florida Panthers, the hockey team.
Oh, cool.
And so between our partnerships, because we know that people in the arenas are going to be looking for a drink and an option, as well as those partnerships, it's really ownable space for us. So it's kind of a combination of those things.
Okay. So, I mean, Christmas holidays, we're recording during the Christmas holiday. Drinks are flowing. Everyone's happy. But you mentioned you launched in dry January 3 years ago. Your third birthday is coming up. You have any exciting plans to celebrate the third birthday or anything happening?
The third birthday, my goal is to educate people on a few things. One being, kind of a cleaner alcohol movement and
Okay.
like really watching that space. I've been introduced to several other founders of kind of trying to be more organic, clean, better for you brands in the alcohol space. A few are wine, one's beer. So really taking a conscious effort of how can we amplify this and share the message, and then also educate people on damp January, which is what I like to call it. I think there's just so much shame around coming off a holiday bender. Don't get me wrong. I'm the same way. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a beat. I'm going to get in the sauna.
Yeah.
I'm going to maybe take a week off, but by January 8th or 9th, I'm ready for another drink.
Yeah.
And so allowing people to have the process and go through the education information on, oh, I can still have a drink. It's just I'm going to make these choices instead of something that's filled with corn syrup, glycerin, red 40, which unfortunately is all over the place. But those are kind of the two things we have planned for January.
Okay. So the clean movement in January and then damp January, which is, I haven't heard that before. I like that. That's
Yeah.
good. It's crazy. It's been 3 years, right? I know you're like,
Insane.
oh my gosh, it's gone so fast. But, and obviously, started inception early 21 or 21 around that time to where we are now and have this can and, to travel around the country and share the family story
It's
from
nuts.
Oklahoma, from Grand Lake. Like, that's what that to me, that's the special sauce, right? Like that's what gives you your passion.
Yeah.
That's what lights up in your eyes.
100%.
Like that's why you do what you do. And the world that you've been in and then the career that you've had up to this moment has all led to this.
Yeah.
Right. Which you probably didn't think that, but it has, all the work that you've done, the universities, the experience that you've had traveling around, moving to LA, seeing all these brands. It's giving you, the roadmap to
Yeah.
this. And like, we have this recipe. Why are we not doing it for ourselves?
It's crazy.
And here we are.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Where do people find it? Where can people buy it? Yeah. Where do you send them?
Okay, fabulous. Well, I would send them to our website, which is drinksouthsides.com. We have a map feature, so depending on where you are listening from, you can find your closest retail location. If we are not as close to you as you would like, we also ship via our fabulous online fulfillment partners, so you can do that straight from our website as well. And if you're interested in the Instagram, it is also Drink Southsides. So give us a look and give us a follow, and
Okay.
that's the best place to find all of it.
All right. I will link those down below in the description. People can go right to that on your phone. You can check that out. And yeah, thank you so much for coming in. Happy early birthday. Merry Christmas. And people listening, go grab a drink. It's definitely worth it. It's awesome. And I'm going to enjoy the rest of mine. So thanks for listening. Catch you next episode. Cheers. Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too, but I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC, and hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.